Hey man, you okay? He was kind of down last week. Well in character. Go big or go home. Favorite rock type. He's a champ. I've always enjoyed playing him in competitive Smogon singles and in the TCG. Don't worry, I'm sure he was well in tuned with the streams and being well attentive last Monday. I just completely understood when I looked over and he was laying down for a bit. Now this guy, very in character. Turns out he was taking a rest on the floor last week, but it seems like he's doing well too. This is for both of you. I'm sure you will take this in the honor of both. So thank you for being cool, Pokemon. I've loved Groudon since Gen 3. Shoutouts to Pokemon Ruby. And, I just want to say it's pretty killer that Pokemon, despite, I think the last two version of games, they've definitely done a lot of not good things. Cutting the national decks was pretty awful. I have always said, though, that the artists keep doing a good job. The composers, the character designers, I think they're doing their job well overall. And it's sad because I think Game Freak and Pokemon, outside of, the main development team of the last two versions, has done a good job with marketing Pokemon, because I love plushies like that. I love that I can go to the store and I just see light up Jigglypuff, Snorlax, Pikachu, kind of statues you can put on your desk. That's really cool too. So I'm hoping that there's something that budges there at Game Freak to make them realize that, again, the last two versions, their artist teams are doing amazing, but they definitely are not even half baking these games. Unfortunately, it's under that, and I'm hoping the best because it's such a IP powerhouse. So best wishes for the next version. Hopefully, it does have the national decks. Something I've been thinking about a lot over the years is advertising and the way that ratings work, right? And it's so interesting to me about, my dad works on TV, and so, I've learned my whole life about, the importance of statistics and how, TVs can track data ratings, right, for advertisers. That's good data. As advertisements help with a lot of things stay in circulation. As my mom said, it's honestly a pretty great privilege that we can watch so many different things on TV without having to pay for it because of ads. I know that some people I'll be like, oh, I hate commercial break, but to be honest, yeah, it's one of those I'm very grateful things where being able to catch Batman the Dark Knight on one channel and then go to Captain America the First Avenger on the other, and I'm not paying for either. And there's a kind of a benefit of, people always talk about commercial breaks could be nice to go get a snack or go to the bathroom real quick. And now we have tech where we can pause, with our remotes and stuff like that. So, advertising has always been interesting because, yeah, it does drive a lot of businesses. And so I've always been interested in the kind of marketing strategies. My last salary job was a marketing job, and it's interesting. I love seeing kind of the risk reward that plays out with different ads and statistics and the demographics that ads go to, how much you're paying. And so, like I said, with TV viewership, that's a pretty data driven rating, right? You're gonna get data back pretty fast for whatever station you work for. Whoever's on the payroll, and that can definitely be a correlation there. But one thing that was kind of just interesting to learn more about, it's literally something that has been around my whole life. I try not to use the word literally, but in this case it is. I think there were quite a few leaving the Evansville hospital for where I was born were billboards. And it's they've been around my whole life. And billboards aren't those type of things where you can get, true raw statistical data of who saw it. You kind of have to do city demographic analysis. Billboards in this stat from Indeed.com is really interesting because billboards can go as low as $250, right? It's for a year, depending, if it's in like a rural area. But then once you get to the cities, like the higher ups, definitely in the upper thousands, and per year. And it's just, when I look at these businesses, and this is when I'm driving, and it's like, obviously there's in Kansas City a lot of law firm ads right now, the casinos, and I'm always asking, okay, I wonder how many people see Ameristar turn right and like, oh, I'm gonna go here, because especially in the age of the internet, if you don't know where Ameristar is, you'll probably look it up on your Google Maps, right? So I wonder how many impulse buy decisions were done with billboards, because some of those billboards, like, need help with an accident? Call now, 555-87258. Now see, first off, that number's incorrect, because if someone's calling and they're one number off, they're not going to get that number. But I'm also thinking, like, who's calling that fast in the car? Which, by the way, PSA, don't actually dial the phone in the car. So what happens usually is a lot of these like law firms that know that game, they will make a number that's really easy to remember. That's why a lot of those ads will, like, instead of saying like, having that digit number, they turn it into a word, right? So it's kind of like, it makes sense, because as a kid I was like, why is there letters in the phone number? And thankfully my parents helped explain that. But if it's like, hey, stop reckless driving, report them now, 555 stop, yeah, that's a lot easier. And so it's just like, you look at that and I'm thinking, okay, these people are paying a lot of money for a Kansas City billboard, and it's always, I'm trying to gauge like, what's the return here. And I think a lot of it has to just be kind of like daring risks. Billboards can be like, they're almost always covered. That's the kind of funny part is, again, living in Missouri, traveling to St. Louis is like a mini road trip. It's a little under 4 hours and you're on one highway the whole time. You see a lot of billboards. You're going to cross through Columbia, Missouri, where the University of Missouri is. And that's especially, once you get towards there, that's when you start getting like, obviously the ads where, whether you're a kid or an adult, you're gonna, you often laugh with the whole car, because you start seeing the weird XXX adult store type ads and how they try to get you, or some of the scare tactics of like, are you doing bad in the world? Are you gonna burn eternally? Just stuff like that. And again, those people are paying money for the billboard, but you really question, who are the people that see those ads are like, well, the first one's like, oh, adult store, that's what I'm looking for out here. Turn it hard, right? And then it's like the eternal burning one. Are they going to be like, honey, sign me up right now? Get out the pen and paper, whether it's the 90s or the 2020s. There you go. Write down the person that's going to help heal you so you're not cursed forever. And so it's just that kind of wide range of ads. And I will tell you one effective ad is Mike's Got This in Kansas City, which to the point that TRK laughs every time he sees him. Yeah, that guy's on an ad, Trailblaze in Kansas City. It's not even a joke, and TRK can tell you, the last 2 times he came to visit from the Netherlands, he started keeping like mental count of how many Mike's Got This billboards he saw. Different ones. He wasn't counting the same one. I helped him out in case he counted the same one. But he overall, it was impressive to me how much he counted the individual billboards. And it was so, he told me that when he flew in here a year ago, that was one of the first ads he saw in the airport was Mike's Got This. That law firm seems to be doing pretty well. And it's just one of those things where, you look at the stats of billboards, and the net return is just so interesting to me about, I would love to hear about board meetings. I would love to hear from professionals that have worked with billboards a lot. Like, how often does your law firm, does your plumbing business, how often do you feel you get a return on this? It's just a fascinating thing because they're everywhere, except, the state of Vermont. And that was interesting too, is recently learning about the state of Vermont banned billboards. And, I don't mind billboards as an aspect in general. Obviously, you're going to make fun of like the ones I mentioned of like Triple X and Eternal Burning. But in general, like the way billboards work, I don't mind them being up there. But the fact that Vermont banned billboards, and then you look at the shots of roads in Vermont, you can kind of see the long-term vision they had. I wonder how many like debates they had, at the state capitol of Vermont about, how much money was actually being made in return on billboards and how much they'd want to actually push, kind of a positive state image of seeing more of like the forestry, like the greenery as you drive. So it really is like, I guess it really is like a trade-off. It's fun. It's fun to travel and make fun of awful billboards, but I'm sure it's great to just drive in Vermont. My stepdad, Alan, was born in that state, and I'm sure he loved hearing that. I love hearing his stories about that state in general. And, another thing, I think what else about billboards is the kind of roadside sponsored billboards. So these are the ones so we're talking about like, oh, I wonder how much net return a billboard makes, right? Especially, sometimes, like if you're a traveler on the interstate and it says Cracker Barrel, yeah, you're going to get some like truck drivers and stuff. And I like Cracker Barrel too. So that makes sense. But yeah, the law firm ones, I think it really depends on how effective they can make the ad. I do think with Mike's Got This, he's pretty assertive with how much he pops up around the city, so people remember him. But the restaurant sponsored signs, I'm talking about they're lower, they're not billboards. It's when you're looking for exits, right? Exit 78, and then as you approach exit 78, it says food next right, and it'll say Five Guys, Raisin Canes, White Castle. So now we're not in Kansas City now, but I would love a White Castle here. And I actually think those are way more effective, and I looked up the average pricing for these lately. It costs a lot less usually than billboards. Now, to be fair, this you have to advertise just the place itself. Billboards, yeah, they do allow you to advertise, at least put some text on there, but you have to understand, yeah, people are driving. So from my personal experience, by seeing like I'm outside Kansas City, right? I'm going up north to Iowa. The fact that those smaller road signs could say Wendy's next right, that is so effective. There's been so many times, especially when I'm out of the city, I don't know where I am exactly. Yeah, if it does say Dunkin' Donuts next right, shoot, okay, I'll go for a cold brew. So that's really cost effective, especially if those prices stay around the same. So it's just one of those things I've been wanting to talk about more is, the world of advertising, but this very specific world of advertising. You drive by pretty fast, so you can't often get the whole message of a billboard. So how, as a marketing strategist, do you make a good ad? And, is it a worthwhile product that often gets people wanting to get it anyway? The whole Wendy's example. I would love to get a chocolate Frosty if I'm driving for a few hours. That sounds great. And so, at the end of the day, it's asking yourself, where can we put our money into advertising, and what effectively works and what doesn't? It honestly, in the world of risk and reward, good old Rampardos here, go big or go home. There's definitely that fun aspect of, putting things out there and seeing if it can make effective returns. And it's just, in this case, you're not going to see a lot of data coming back when you advertise on a giant billboard. But I do think in the long run, like as I'm talking about Mike's Got This, as TRK in the Netherlands has probably told his friends about it, that's its own advertising because they kept, a pretty assertive layer of consistency. And it's very daring. It's a big aspect of, are you willing to, if you don't take up the billboard, someone else might, that push and shove. But, looking at the prices and just kind of asking yourself, how many turn rights are you going to get from this? How many phone numbers are people going to remember? And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun just to kind of gauge the socioeconomics of it, and this kind of widens out to advertising in general. What kind of ads get to what people, and then of course what ads people might not like. You know, there are definitely could be ads that people aren't a fan of, or just the whole, you know, psychological things of like, you know, color theory and certain ways that people might not catch the message. So I've just been really like fascinated by this constant strategy, adaptation or lack of adaptation from so many businesses when it comes to a form of advertising when people are driving on the road, and especially now where PSAs are even more assertive about keep your eyes on the road. So there, you know, I look forward to my next drive and what ads I'll see there, and I look forward to, you know, what is pushed out there in terms of, you know, what people see. And I do love hearing stories about, like, you'll go to a local cafe and someone say, hey, I saw this on Facebook, right? So if I can hear people say, hey, I saw the Billboard ad, you know, on Interstate 40, I wanted to check this out, I took a hard right, drive safe. But that would be interesting to hear too, and that effectiveness of how much that can change just a small road trip. What time you're willing to put out to go check that place out. I'd love to hear it. That's something in the future I want to go look at more, and hopefully it's brought up in conversation with others. Is I will ask, like, hey, how oftentimes do you see an ad for a coffee shop and you take a small detour? Because it's pretty amazing that taking a small detour, you can meet new people that you might be talking to the rest of your life. And there's a lot of decisions we do each day that can make a huge difference in the world. So I hope you do find that great coffee shop, get yourself a nice latte, and have a good one. Have a good week, and have a great Monday. That's definitely a good one for me.